Ahsoka Part 6 is just around the corner, and today, just as I normally do in my preview videos, we're going to be talking about some juicy details, some new information, everything we know, and as always, lining it with some exciting speculation. So just to get the basics out of the way, which I mentioned a couple of days ago, this is the episode by Jennifer Getzinger, a newcomer to the Star Wars franchise, and it's 46 minutes long. Now, going into this episode, Star Wars fans have a certain blue Grand Admiral on their minds, Grand Admiral Thrawn. Is this the episode where he finally appears? If I had to guess, I would say this is very likely with 3 episodes to go. Now, there is one account who over the last few weeks has been dishing out significant spoilers over on Reddit for the Ahsoka series, and now they seem to have gone silent. But just before their departure, they left us with a huge tease for this episode, apparently what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. They simply wrote, "You ain't ready for the Noti," and this naturally caused everyone to wonder, what in the world is a Noti? Were they talking about the Nogri, like Rook, who died in Star Wars Rebels, because Timothy Zahn teased that Thrawn may have more? But actually they're not. If I had to guess, I would say they're referring to the ancient Nightsisters who have been facilitating contact between Morgan Elsbeth and Thrawn in Peridea. They are the original Nightsisters from the Second Galaxy, engraved over the Nightsister Temple, as we saw in the first episode of the show. And now we're going to see them, and this account claims the Noti, or the Noti, not too sure how it's pronounced, is going to break the internet. And along with some other things we've heard about Grand Admiral Thrawn, that is why a certain portion of the fandom is going to prefer Part 6 to Part 5. It's a very different kind of episode. We're really going to the Second Galaxy. And if we're to look at recent Star Wars shows, I predict this next episode is going to be a setup of sorts for episodes 7 and 8. We don't know if it's going to be a 2-part finale, but even in name, we know this season is coming to a climactic end. I really do hope we see Ezra and Thrawn. That would be my biggest wish for this next episode. The reason I don't want them to leave Ezra Bridger to like the last episode or something like that is because I want to see him interact with Sabine. So this source, which is the same one that told us about the Clone Wars flashbacks and even named the right planets, also predicted a ton of stuff for the recent episodes. They're saying that we're not ready for the so-called Noti. Is this going to be another demonstration of ILM doing something really impressive in terms of creature design? I imagine they're going to be different from the Nightsisters we know from Jedi Fallen Order and the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels. This could be something else entirely. Now, while there is a lot of excitement for this next episode, the source does claim 7 and 8, the 2 episodes that finish the season, are the 2 out of the remaining episodes that are particularly thrilling. That's not to say episode 6 isn't going to be as good, but at the same time, I hope they don't waste any time. But for all we know, the voyage to Peridea could take up a lot of the episode, conversations between our villains and Sabine, who realistically is probably in custody. They probably have her somewhere on the ship. And in the Purgle, Ahsoka and Huyang. Also important to note is that Thrawn is not going to be alone. He's not only got a new bodyguard, but also a right-hand man. Whereas Chatham is an actor who was rumoured for the Ahsoka show, and he is very likely to appear in episode 6, and he's playing a character called Captain Enoch. This is a new character, and while fans of the canon books wanted Eli Vanto, first introduced in 2017, I don't think he's going to be in this series. Now, I came across something on social media that puts into perspective the onus Lucasfilm is putting on the last few episodes. So far, going into the first 5, there has been tons of footage from the teaser trailers and TV spots where we can look and predict, is that going to be in this upcoming episode? But with episode 6, we only have a couple of frames left, the frames of Grand Admiral Thrawn. That is it, that is all that is left, as well as some dialogue by Hayden Christensen as Anakin. I don't think that's going to be this week though. That's when he's giving motivation to Ahsoka. Of course, she could be dreaming on the way to Peridea, and that's where Anakin's Force Ghost could speak those lines, where he says, "I know you can do it, Ahsoka." This upcoming episode is crucial for another reason too. In a sense, it will be a litmus test for how much Dave Filoni is really drawing upon Heir to the Empire, and if we're witnessing the beginning of a Disney Star Wars adaptation. We already heard the name drop of Leia Organa. I made a video explaining why that is so important, but more than anything, could that be an indicator of the original trilogy characters coming into the show later on, maybe in season 2, but definitely in Dave's film? I can't imagine Timothy Zahn having worked on this show, setting up Heir to the Empire so to speak, or a Disney version of some of those plot threads without having those original characters. and even setting aside Zahn's work. Also what comes later in the timeline with Bloodline, the Resistance, the sequel trilogy, we need characters like Leia to be involved. There was a huge indicator at the end of last week's episode that plot threads of Heir to the Empire are being introduced, that Filoni's inspired by them, but until we see Thrawn and what he's like, if they're going to make him a villain or antagonist, the type of character he's like, then we won't know. And fans of the character for 32 years are curious what he's going to be like in live action. So what was this scene last week? Well, at the end of part 5, the New Republic cruisers show up to Teases to reprimand Hera and Carson Teva. And this felt deliberately as the visual setup for something greater to come. In this context, who they're going to be up against, because as was rumoured, a new iteration of Thrawn's fleet is going to return to the known galaxy, and I imagine some new additions that Thrawn and Morgan Elsbeth have had built. These cruisers by comparison will not seem as impressive and daunting. You see, the Ahsoka series has made a big deal of these ships. We were told by Hera they are state-of-the-art. We're shown the scale of them, how grandiose and impressive and technologically advanced they are. I don't think in the first stages of the war that's going to ensue between the Remnant and the New Republic, they're going to stand much of a chance at first. Heir to the Empire in both the novel and the comics has some awesome space battles from the word go. And I'm thinking they're going to save those for Dave's film, which is why I must emphasise, I think by the end, Thrawn does return. The next episode is going to be a big indicator of the direction Dave is taking. So now I want to talk about some fun speculation, big picture stuff when it comes to Grand Admiral Thrawn and his goals. You see, I've brought up the proposition in the past that he might be trying to warn his allies and foes about a threat he's discovered out in Peridia, and my theory is that it's once again the Grysk. Now at this stage, there's already been an Imperial Grysk war, and the Grysk hegemony took a pretty big defeat. I can imagine them coming back with a vengeance, wanting revenge over Grand Admiral Thrawn, the Chiss, and so Thrawn is preparing a Nightsister army, the so-called Noti, as well as more military to take them on. He might be trying to come back to the galaxy to warn them, and there are hints that it's the Grysk. Because after the Imperial Grysk War, Grand Admiral Thrawn did steal and use some of the Grysk technology, which is very similar to the hyperspace technology and the star map systems used by Morgan Elsbeth, who of course answers to Thrawn. It's very similar to the ocular scope that the attendants of the Grysk, who serve the Imperial Remnant, and then later in the timeline Supreme Leader Snoke use. If there is going to be an extragalactic threat, I would say it's this. A nod to some canon Zahn books, such as Greater Good, Lesser Evil, Thrawn Treason, and Alliances. So his goals may be bigger than just a simple villain trying to take out the Republic for power. And so finally, my dear friends, the music in the Ahsoka series has been nothing short of exceptional. And I've always said the villains of Star Wars, when they make their entrance, they deserve an epic theme. So if Grand Admiral Thrawn appears in this episode, he should have the most tone-appropriate entry music. There was a really cool theme from Star Wars Rebels titled Thrawn's Web, but for this, they should really go all out. I'm talking about reverb-filled, chilling organ music, or something to that effect. I'm so hyped for this one. Those are some of my thoughts, some of my theories, speculation, and the latest details as well. Share your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, my dear friends, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new, look out for my breakdown on Wednesday, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.